Over the years, the WWE have definitely been involved in their fair share of controversies. Now, some of these controversies are much worse than others. Some have had minor effect, or little to no effect really, and some have nearly taken down the entire company itself. Well, in today's video, I'm going to try and rank some of the worst controversies. Yeah, this is a bit of a controversial video for me to make. Before we get into that though, if you are new here, make sure to go down below, drop a like and subscribe. I post multiple wrestling videos every single week to keep you lot entertained. But with that being said, let's get into the video. So here you can see our tiers. We have Benoit, company altering, middle of the road, could have been worse, and bad but not terrible. Realistically, there's no good controversy from WWE's history, but we're going to start off with the one that's actually named. We're going to go for Benoit, and he's going straight there. In June 2007, Chris Benoit decided to take the lives of his wife and son before ultimately taking his own life. Now, the Chris Benoit tragedy is well documented. I don't need to go too much into detail on here. I'm sure there's plenty of videos out there for you to go and watch if you want to know more information. Now, the thing with the Chris Benoit tragedy is that it wasn't just that he murdered his wife and son, it was the effect it had on the WWE, and that is the standpoint we are looking at when making this video, because what Chris Benoit did is despicable. It's disgusting. And for as great as a wrestler as Chris Benoit was, he was a disgusting human being. Now, the effects that the Benoit tragedy had on the WWF was another steroid trial, which we'll get to the original steroid trial in a little bit, after a lot of the media blamed roid rage for Chris Benoit's actions. Now, me personally, I lean more towards the side that CTE probably caused it. I mean, when investigators looked at Chris Benoit's brain, it was determined that he had, like, the brain of an advanced, like, senior citizen with a severe neurological condition. Like, that the man was not of well mind. Now, in no way does that justify his actions. I believe it was Paul Heyman that said 3 people died that night, only one of them had a choice in the matter. But based off of things that have happened, the Chris Benoit incident definitely could have shut down the WWE, and people certainly tried to in the wake of the Chris Benoit incident. And WWE probably didn't help themselves in the fact that they aired a tribute show to Chris Benoit before receiving all of the facts from the police and investigators. When you dedicate, was it an episode of Raw, 3 hours of television to everybody saying how much they love this guy and miss this guy and how great of a wrestler he was, just for days later it to come out that he murdered his whole family before taking his own life. WWE didn't help themselves, and while everyone else was still trying to take down the WWE, like I said, they didn't help matters, and it's a tragic circumstance, and it definitely could have seen the end of World Wrestling Entertainment. Now, I want to move on to something I briefly mentioned when talking about Benoit, and that is the 1993-94 steroid trial. Now, if you don't know about the 1993-94 steroid trial, that was a federal investigation which seen the US government try and convict Vince McMahon of supplying his wrestlers with anabolic steroids. You know, people were paying attention to the fact you had guys like Hulk Hogan, like British Bulldog, like, I mean, many other names, any wrestler from that generation juiced to the gills on steroids. So for the US government, it wasn't that much of a reach to suggest that maybe they're getting these steroids from Vince McMahon. Now this, if Vince McMahon had have been found guilty, would have been company altering. It probably would have been bigger than Benoit, because Benoit probably wouldn't have happened. It would have shut down the WWF, and Vince McMahon would have been sent to prison. He would literally have been prosecuted as essentially a drug kingpin. Now, ultimately, a jury of Vince McMahon's peers found him not guilty, and it definitely could have been worse, and that's where I think it lands. To say they then went through another steroid trial, and I mean, even look at WWE television today. You're telling me there's guys on that roster that aren't juicing? Of course there is. The steroid trial could have been catastrophic, but ultimately ended up being only a minor inconvenience for the WWE, or at the time, WWF. Next, I want to talk about the death of Owen Hart. Now, Owen Hart's untimely death has long time been a controversy for the WWE. For those who don't know, at the Over the Edge pay-per-view, Owen Hart performing as the Blue Blazer was scheduled to take on the Godfather, I believe. And part of Owen's gimmick gimmick was to rappel from the rafters, like almost like a superhero. Now, in doing so, Owens' equipment failed and he fell from approximately like 70 to 80 feet, I've seen reported. Now, this would ultimately take Owens' life. Now, why is this such a controversy? Because, you know, accidents happen. Well, the WWF decided to continue the pay-per-view that evening after many of Owens' friends and family had just seen the man plunge to his death. They were expected to go out and perform in front of thousands of fans, as well as millions watching at home, who had also seen Owen crash and fall to his death. I think many people have gone on record since saying that it was the wrong decision, the definite wrong decision. I mean, fans would have understood had the show ended. Wrestlers would have understood, and yeah, that weren't great. But following on from that, Owens' widow Martha would ultimately sue the WWF, claiming negligence in a wrongful death lawsuit, which would be settled outside of court. She's remained very critical of WWE in the years, even going as far now as to work with AEW, WWE's main competition. Now, part of me genuinely despises the way that WWE handled the Owen Hart situation, genuinely. And I look at someone like Bret Hart, who's been able to, you know, make amends with Vince McMahon and the WWF following Owens' death. I don't know that I could have. I would have to say that Bret is probably a bigger man than me in that regard. After the way that the company screwed over Bret and then to take the life of his brother, whether accident or not, I couldn't have gone back there. That's just me. I want to say that the Owen Hart's death should have been company altering, but I don't think it was. I really don't think it was. I think it has to sit in middle of the road as far as the impact it had on the WWE. Owen Hart was a phenomenal wrestler that was taken far too soon, and his death should have mattered more, in my opinion. But I don't think it massively affected the way WWF and now WWE did business. Now, next, we're going to talk about the WWF plane ride from hell. Now, following a European tour in 2002, the WWF had their plane full of wrestlers, basically taking them home, where a lot of wrestlers became very intoxicated and a lot of bad things went down on this flight. From fights to alleged sexual harassment to alleged indecent exposure, things like that. This plane ride was a mess from start to finish, and Dark Side of the Ring actually did a very good documentary type episode on this, and I think it's well worth a watch if you don't know the full details. It does the story more justice than I ever could. Now, following the plane ride from hell, it basically caused an internal investigation which seen numerous WWE superstars suspended or even worse, released. For that reason alone, part of me wants to put it in company altering because it did have an impact on the company. However, I would personally say I don't think it's one of the worst controversies. I think the Owen Hart death and the steroid trial could have been much worse, but ultimately I've got to go with how they impacted the WWF, and I think the plane ride from hell was probably worse in terms of impact. And now we come to the last controversy we're going to talk about in today's video. It is the Janelle Grant lawsuit, the most recent controversy on this list. For those who don't know, a former female WWE employee by the name of Janelle Grant came out and accused Vince McMahon and numerous others of sexual assault, abuse of power, trying to cover things up, lots of things. And it wasn't just Vince McMahon that was accused. I mean, John Laurinaitis was accused, Brock Lesnar was accused, and this then led to a federal investigation into Vince McMahon that I haven't actually heard a lot about. I think it might have been dropped. I know that the civil case between Vince McMahon and Janelle Grant has now gone into arbitration. Now, ultimately, when we look at the effect that this has had on the WWE, I kind of want to put it in bad but not terrible, because Vince McMahon, for the most part at this point, was, you know, towards the exit in WWE, and this did kick him to the curb, so you could say it was company altering. But as far as WWE is concerned, it probably made the product better. I mean, it did have the impact of us having Brock Lesnar removed from our screens, but ultimately he's been back in WWE and finished his career. Worked with guys like John Cena, Obafemi. The only person that this has really impacted is Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis. And John Laurinaitis is, well, by all accounts, not a very good guy anyway. And Vince McMahon is just gonna, again, probably pay his way out of it. So could it have been worse? Yes, but can I put it on the same scale as the steroid trial for the impact it would have had on the WWE? No, I can't. It is absolutely terrible what Janelle Grant allegedly went through. And like all of these controversies, they are terrible, but I am looking at the impact they would have had on the WWE or WWF. And the Janelle Grant lawsuit, I would honestly say, had minor impacts on the WWE. But that's my rankings, only 5 today, because I wanted to give each controversy their own time. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want to rush through a bunch of controversies. I wanted to give them the respect that they deserve. Honestly, this was probably a bit of an uncomfortable video to make, and you can probably see that in this video, and I apologize for that. It's hard to talk about some of the worst things that's ever happened involving WWE and then not even be able to look at it from a human perspective, but look at it from a perspective of the impact it would have had on the company. You know, realistically, these were all terrible, and I want to say that they were all terrible, but I have to argue for some being worse than others when it comes to the impact they had on the WWE. Let me know what you thought of this video down below in the comments. I really want to get your opinions on this. And while you're down there, if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe as well. But I've taken up enough of your time. I will see you all next time.